Welcome to my YouTube channel and to my train room. Some time ago, one of my viewers asked me if I would consider doing a video on how to make a two-piece silicone rubber mold. Well, I've decided to do that for this week's offering. So let's turn the camera around and take a look at how to do it. The first steps in making a two-part mold are exactly the same as a regular single-part mold. Start by preparing the master. In this case it is a brick column with end caps, and then you need to build a mold box. I've done this one out of styrene, exactly the same as you've seen me do for the single part molds. Now when designing the box we have to remember to leave plenty of space around it because there are going to be other things cut into the mold. And to avoid getting parting lines down the brick surfaces, I'm going to mount it diagonally like that, so that any parting lines are on the corners where they're going to be less visible. Now, unlike my one-piece molds where I'm putting the master at the top, here the master gets put against the end wall and the mold will eventually be stood up to pour into. So the mold box you'll see is a lot deeper, because the master will go halfway up it instead of right at the top. We need some kind of flexible substance to half fill the mold box and bury the bottom half of the master in. Now I have this product here which I think came in my Micromark starter set, but I've never used it. It's because I haven't done any two-piece molds recently. You can use modeling clay or any other kind of flexible substance that you can fill the mold with and then separate it from the master when all is done. Now if this is what I think it is, it's very similar to something I had as a kid. Almost looks like plasticine. Now it's kind of hard at the moment. It's probably because it's cool down in this basement. I'm thinking I need that much. I need more than that because I've got to be able to half fill the mold. Okay. It needs to be soft enough to push it into the mold box, fill all the corners without breaking it, and then be able to push the master into it without breaking that either. It is softening up a little bit. Well, I heated it up. What I did eventually was dropped it in a mug of hot water, and that instantly softened it. Now what I'm doing is filling the mold box halfway up. Doesn't have to be exact, but the closer I can get it the better, because I want both sides of the mold about the same size. That will maximize the space between the corners of the master and the edge. Now what I do is embed the master into the clay halfway like that, and I'm going to continue flattening around it. The surface doesn't need to be completely flat. What I do need, however, is to get the edge fairly close to the corner of the master. Now you want to make sure that you don't have anything on the surface of the master, because that will be reproduced in perfect detail on every casting you ever make. So take your time to make sure the master is completely clean. Now in order to give positive location for the two parts of the mold, I'm going to take this rounded paintbrush handle and make some depressions. and then when I pour the first part of the silicone rubber, it will go into those depressions and they will help to line up the mold perfectly every time. Now what I've got to do is make sure that's nice and dry before I put the release agent in. Well, I have my mold release agent. Just going to spray this quickly. Now it says it needs to be left for a couple of minutes before applying the rubber, so by the time I've mixed the rubber it'll be ready to coat. I'm using Micromark 1:1 Rapid, which is a really easy rubber and no more expensive than any others. Oh, okay. I need the same quantity of both parts. Now, as always, I mix slightly more than I think I need, because it's better to have a little left over than to not have enough to fill the mold. When I can no longer see any streaks in it, then it's mixed well enough. Just scrape the sides and bottom of the mixing cup one more time and then pour it in the mold. I'm going to pour slowly from one corner and let it gradually cover the master. I'm going to put a little bit more in so that it's slightly overfilled. That way I don't have ridges that are going to prevent the mold from sitting flat when I want to fill it. I got a few cc's extra, which is a bit of a waste, but not excessive. And now I'm just going to leave that there. Once again, I have to show patience, which is not my strong suit. I will come back tomorrow morning and do the other half. So I'll see you then. Well, I've left this mold to set up overnight. It's now nice and hard. Normally with a one-piece mold this would now be done and I just peel off the sides of the mold box and start casting. But if you recall, only the top half is done. I still need to get into the bottom and put silicone rubber around the other half of the master. So what I'm going to try to do now is to open up the bottom of the mold box without disturbing the rest of it. Now I don't always succeed. Sometimes things will go wrong and I'll end up with the mold and the master separated. I don't really want that to happen, although in this particular case there's no undercuts, so I feel fairly confident that I will be able to put it back into the half finished mold without problems. Even so, if I can get the bottom off without disturbing it, so much the better. As you can see, I'm just cutting around the base. Okay, so far so good. Now I've got to dig out all the clay. And of course I want to make sure that I don't dig deep enough to gouge the master. Is starting to come up mostly in one piece. Ha. There we are. I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning up before I put the rest of the rubber in. Now, as I said before,
any of this stuff that remains on the master will result in imperfections in every casting I ever make. There is a small amount of silicone that has managed to work its way over the other half of the master. I need to get that out as well, because once again that will be duplicated on all the castings if I don't. Now, if I were to forget the release agent at this point, the whole thing would be totally destroyed, because the new batch of silicone would stick to itself perfectly and it would become one mass. So what I'm going to do is put the release agent in now, before I mix up the rubber and before I forget. Well, I've let this silicone cure. Now I've got to get it out of the mold box, and at this point I can just tear the corners off, or tear the sides off rather. They don't want to come off. I'll just cut it away. And there's our two-piece mold. It's as simple as that. Before we can pour any resin, we need to find a way of holding the two pieces of the mold together. I just cut a couple of blocks of wood and I use an elastic band like so. You don't need a lot of tension on it, just enough to stop the resin from spreading the mold, but without causing any distortion. Let's use the release agent. I always do that the first couple of times I use a mold, after which I found it to be not really necessary. Reinstall the elastic band. Now, because of the difficulty of getting an accurate mix with such a small volume of resin, I'm going to make a slightly larger batch and then have a couple of other molds on hand to fill up to use any excess resin. Since I only have less than 2 minutes of working time, I've got to make sure I've got everything ready. There's my measuring cup, stirring stick. Give these a shake because they've been standing for a while. And let's get ready to pour. Now, I haven't cut any release tubes in this mold. I don't know yet whether I need them. The first casting will tell me when it comes out. Okay, the moment of truth. Opening up. and I have slight bubbles in the corners. So yes, it could do with some air release tubes.
Well, as you heard at the end, the results weren't quite perfect. I hope you're not too disappointed. I'm not going to redo the mould, mainly because the castings I'm getting out of it are perfectly satisfactory for what I need them for. I did find on subsequent pours that if I put just a few drops of resin in the bottom and then give it a few sharp taps on the table before filling it the rest of the way, it does improve the end cap somewhat. So that's all for this week. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.
And let's get ready to pour. The cap's stuck on. Let me get some pliers.